Hello and welcome to episode 855 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, as always joined by Evan Silva, and the NFL draft is just one short week away. Very much looking forward to the mock draft show we're doing Monday. But of course, for me, it's all about the props. And so we are back with Anthony Amico for NFL Draft Props Show Updated Part 2. Amico, 1 week left. How's it going, buddy?
It's going great, man. This draft's kind of sneaking up on us. The late Easter. It's a quick turnaround here.
Indeed, it is. But we need to get liquid and get these draft props graded so we can get some money once again. Evan, how's it going today?
It's going great. The draft is coming up real soon. I did a radio hit this morning. I'm going on VSiN right after this. Daigle's got a mock draft up on the site on EstablishTheRun.com. I've got a mock draft up on the site. Amico's been doing mock drafts since God knows when on his Substack. So we're all locked and loaded. And people are getting mad at me about, he's got Jahdae Barron, number 5 overall. We'll talk about all that stuff today. I'm excited.
Yes, we will talk about some elements of Silva's mock draft that the people are not happy with. Hopefully, you all caught our Draft Props Part 1 show, episode 850 from April 1st. In the 2.5 weeks since then, a ton has changed. We're going to talk about the latest rumors, information on the NFL draft, and how that is shaping the betting markets. Before we get into it today, 2 quick things. First, looking like there will be plenty of overlay in the pre-draft NFL best ball contest. If you want access to our best ball rankings, which are updated in real time continuously, you need our best ball subscription. It's just $49.99, covers everything best ball we do from now until week 1. Check out the details in the NFL tab on EstablishTheRun.com. Along those lines, our friends at Underdog, of course, have massive action in the best ball streets 12 months out of the year. We, of course, have rankings and strategy for Underdog formats. If you are a new user at Underdog, use promo code ETR, and your first deposit match will be 50% up to a max of $1,000. Again, promo code ETR at UnderdogFantasy.com. All right, let's get into it here. We'll start with the pick number market. Cam Ward, minus 20,000. We talked about that last time. Stone Cold Lock, nothing has changed. Number 2 pick, Travis Hunter, is now out to minus 330. If you follow almost any of the rumors since we did the show, basically, in the last 2 weeks, everybody has the Browns taking Travis Hunter. We have the general manager of the Browns out here also saying what Evans talked about a lot. I think Travis Hunter will be primarily a receiver first, which is music to my ears, obviously, as a fantasy player. And I think that he is going to be a very, very good NFL wide receiver. If they primarily play him at wide receiver, we do not often see wide receivers go number 2 overall. You're talking about guys like Jamar Chase, Julio Jones, and now you're going to add Travis Hunter to the mix here. Evan, minus 330. If you're like stone cold sure that the Browns are taking him, it might even be worth laying minus 330 on Travis Hunter at this point. What do you think about the odds to go number 2 market?
Yeah, even if the Browns get blown away with a trade offer, I think it's going to be Travis Hunter at number 2 regardless. I mean, to me, it's not fun to bet minus 330, but I do think that he's I would say it's Cam Ward 99.9% number 1, Travis Hunter almost same probability number 2.
Okay. Yeah. And so if you think it's 99%, minus 330 is pretty decent. You can actually find some minus 300s out there also. And again, we're showing, if you're watching this on YouTube, which I recommend everyone does, we're showing DraftKings prices here, but please shop. There's some huge discrepancies across sites. Number 3, it starts to get a little bit more interesting, Amico. Everybody assumes that the Giants are going to stay put and take Abdul Carter here. That is minus 285. What do you think about that price right now, Amico, on the Giants, assuming they stay there, and Abdul Carter?
I mean, I think that the Abdul Carter odds should more or less match the Travis Hunter odds. I think quarterback is completely out of the picture at this point for them. There was like a little bit of a swell that, maybe Shadur is not completely out of the picture when it came out that he was going to have the workout, but then it came out that they're basically working out every quarterback. So yeah. I kind of feel like that's done. So I think Carter's a relative value at minus 285. I feel pretty good that that's the top 3.
I don't put a lot of stock in this who they're working out stuff. Like every year, markets move in props on, I don't know what you think, Amico, but every year markets move on this guy's working out for this team. You have to do your due diligence and get to know, even if you're going to play against Shedeur Sanders, I'd like to work him out and see what his strengths and weaknesses are. And it doesn't do you any harm to work him out, assuming that you have the workouts and the visits and everything. So I don't put a lot of stock in these workout rumors, and that did move the market briefly. I mean, Evan didn't even have Shedeur Sanders in his round one of his mock, and here we are. He's only plus 475 to go number 3 overall. I agree with Amico. If I was betting number 3 market, I would lay the minus 285 on Abdul Carter, although I'm probably not playing this market right now. Evan, any final thoughts here on odds to go number 3?
Nope.
Okay. Starts to get more interesting as we get back here. Will Campbell is the favorite to go 4th overall to the New England Patriots. There was, I think we talked about like the odds to be the first offensive lineman off the board. We'll talk about that market more in a second, but Will Campbell minus 225. That's seems pretty confident. Evan, how are you confident are you that Will Campbell will be the number 4 pick off the board?
Level of confidence is moderately high, I would say right now. I did put him number 4 overall in my final mock. I do still think that the Patriots could be a candidate to trade down, which could throw a wrench into that expectation. Will Campbell, I think, was a great offensive lineman in college, but does not have the requisite length that teams generally look for in a starting left tackle. He could end up being a guard, eventually, but guards don't typically go number 4 overall. I still think that there's a chance that we could see a curveball like Ashton Jeanty at number 4. So to me, I'm staying away from minus 225 for Will Campbell at number 4.
Yeah, I mean, I think you took earlier in the process, Amico, Campbell, first offensive lineman off the board versus Membu. There was a time when Membu was the favorite in that market. Now it's obviously flipped. Any thoughts here on odds to go number 4, Amico?
I mean, I would just rather bet first O-line. It's minus 210 on the same book. So, I feel like you get some extra outs if something does get crazy at 4, if Jeanty goes or someone trades up or Jalen Walker goes, whatever. I think Will Campbell is still super alive at 5, at 6. And he would be the first offensive lineman still. So I'd rather just bet it that way.
Okay. Number 5, Evan released his mock, and the people are not happy, Evan, because at number 5, you had Jahdae Barron in your mock to the Jaguars. He is 35-1 here. There is some 100-1 out there on Jahdae Barron to go 5th overall. Maybe you should explain your thought process here on mocking Barron 5 to Jacksonville.
Yeah, I think that Peter Schrager, who was on, I believe, McAfee yesterday, did the best job of summing it up, that it is no man's land from picks 5 going forward. And it would not be surprised if the player that he expects to be the number 5 overall pick in the draft goes like 18, 19, or 20. That's how wide open it is from 5 onward. Jahdae Barron, I think, has picked up some steam to be the second cornerback drafted. Now, the general book on him, even though he primarily played outside corner last year at Texas, the general book on him is that he's a slot corner, but he's 5'11", 194, and ran 4.39. Those are the dimensions of a perimeter cornerback. Again, he played a bunch of perimeter this past year. He also played a lot in the box, and he did play some slot. His profile kind of reminds me of Brian Branch, who has been a high impact player in the Lions secondary, playing all over. Can play a multitude of positions, and I think that the Jaguars could use help at. Eric Murray right now is projected to be one of their starting safeties, and he's not a particularly impressive player. And they have an opening at the cornerback spot opposite Tyson Campbell. They did sign Jordan Lewis, who's generally a slot corner, this offseason. So people are like, oh, they're drafting another slot corner here. But I'm not sure that Jahdae Barron is a slot corner only. And again, I think that his range of outcomes could be anywhere from 5 into the 20s. So yeah. I'm throwing a dart here. Again, I think that this is a premium position. The Jaguars have a new GM who is very analytically minded. I think he's going to want his first pick to be a premium position. at a position of need, and I would consider this a position of need. So that's my thinking behind that. I don't think that Jahdae Barron is going to be the number 5 overall pick. I have no idea who the number 5 overall pick is going to be, and that's really an acknowledgement of that.
Yeah, I mean, 100 to 1, I would take a shot, just based on what Evan's saying here. 100 to 1, you only need to be right a little bit over 1% of the time for it to be good. 35 to 1 is a little bit shakier to me here, but Mason Graham at minus 135. Almost all the mocks, not Evans, but almost all the mocks have Mason Graham, defensive lineman, 5th. Amico, any thoughts on this one? And I do want to pull up the defensive back market too while you talk about that number 5 market.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so hard for me to get away from Mason Graham. I know that we have a lot of, collective groupthink on there. He's probably the most commonly mocked player to Jacksonville, but I just still think that there's some merit. I mean, James Gladstone has really been part of an organization that believes in trenches. They've drafted defensive linemen with short arms in the past, so I don't think that that's really a detriment here. So that's still my lean. I'm probably not laying money on it to go 5. I do think if he doesn't go 5, he's probably in play at 6-7. So it's I don't think he's going to go very far, but probably not my favorite way to attack that.
That's been my thinking on Mason Graham, is that he could potentially slip, that he could be a player that the NFL media populace, NFL draft media is higher on than NFL teams because he has short arms. He's not particularly explosive. You want him to play 3 technique, and he's not an elite athlete, and he's not particularly big. He's only 296 pounds. So I actually had him slipping all the way to number 11, San Francisco. But again, I have no confidence in any projection really from 5 onward. I just feel like I'm throwing darts blindfolded.
Okay, what about this market, Evan? If you like Barron, you can get second quarterback selected market is up on DraftKings now. Will Johnson is minus 270. Barron is plus 205. I think last time we did the show, you also mentioned Maxwell Hairston at 20 to 1. Any updated thoughts on second quarterback selected? And by the way, this market, and you need to check what book you're betting on. A lot of books are listing Travis Hunter not in the first cornerback market. DraftKings does have Travis Hunter in their first corner. So we're talking about second corner now. In other words, after Travis Hunter. Evan, any thoughts on this one?
So Will Johnson was considered to have a fairly disappointing final season in college and did not run at all at pro day or combine before the draft. That's going to be scary to teams, I believe, when they're getting ready to turn in the card on a play. I mean, I think that he is more like a guy that could go in the teens, or what the Dolphins are picking at 13 and they're going to trade Jalen Ramsey. Maybe that's where his window might start. I just, a cornerback without any speed profile. I want to bet on Jahdae Barron to be drafted ahead of Will Johnson. Now, they're considered different kinds of players. Most people think that Jahdae Barron has to be a slot cornerback. Will Johnson is more of like a perimeter cornerback. I think that there's more value, generally speaking, historically, in perimeter cornerbacks. However, that also may be changing, as we've seen it change a little bit with slot receivers in the NFL versus outside cornerbacks. I want to bet on Jahdae Barron to be the second cornerback drafted over Will Johnson. Will Johnson at minus 270, that's almost like considering him a virtual lock to be the second cornerback drafted. And that is, I think that that's ridiculous.
Yeah, you can get Barron plus 205 here on DraftKings. Some other books might open up this market. I haven't seen it. I don't think Amico second cornerback drafted in many other spots.
Yeah, a lot of places have like a second DB and it includes the safeties. So
yeah. All right, let's go back to the pick numbers here. Since we last talked, they opened up who will go pick number 6, who will go pick number 7, 8, 9, 10. These are the ones where I'm like, if there's going to be a trade and these markets are based on team need, I want to take long shots here. I haven't really gotten my head around exactly how I want to do this yet, but I definitely don't want to be laying money, I don't think, on any of these spots. Favorite for number 6 is Ashton Genty, minus 150. Number 7, Membu, minus 115. And then you get to 8, where Jalen Walker, I mean, everybody's saying the Panthers are going to take Jalen Walker. So yeah, Amico, any thoughts on 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 that you want to get off your chest?
I mean, I think that the angle that I like at pick 7 would be Jalen Walker, 12-1. As you mentioned, everyone's connecting Carolina to Walker at 8. So it just feels like a natural trade spot if there is going to be a trade. I think that in general, trades in the top 10 will be a little difficult this year. But I know that, at least based on reporting, that like Atlanta is really into Jalen Walker. I'm sure that they're not the only team. So I think that the Jets kind of become a natural trade spot, especially if like, let's say Will Campbell goes 4 and then Memu goes like 6 to the Raiders. Well, now all of a sudden you were at pick 7. There's not really a tackle maybe that we like. So yeah, we'll trade back. And then Jalen Walker goes there 12-1. I think that's a good bet.
Yeah. Evan, I know like people are not expecting there to be many trades. Like the general consensus out there is there are not going to be many trades in the first round this year because the class is flattish, right? After the first couple picks, the class looks very flat. And so why would you trade up? I think you had a contrarian take on that though. And I think that does affect those markets. So yeah, any thoughts on trades, specifically here in the top 10, if you think there'll be any?
Yeah, I think that there could be a lot of trades beginning at number 4 overall, definitely number 5 overall for the same reasons that we've mentioned, because the board seems to be so flat from pick number in terms of talent from pick number 5 all the way through pick 40, maybe even pick 60. Like there's just not a big gap in talent from number 5 overall to number 60, and that means that if teams fall in love with players, then I think it's not going to be particularly expensive for teams to move up and go get their guy.
Yeah.
I also think that there could be a ton of veteran player trades that could factor into moves up and down the board. We talked about Mark Andrews and Dallas Goedert. I think that Tyreek Hill could be traded. The Dolphins openly want to trade Jalen Ramsey, George Pickens,
Michael Mayer.
Michael Mayer. Ooh, yeah, that's another good one. I mean, I just think that there's going to be a ton of movement because it's not going to be particularly expensive to move up for guys that teams want. And so I want to bet whenever we get an over-under in terms of how many trades will happen in the first round, like I want to be over pretty much whatever that number is.
Yeah.
Because I think there's going to be a lot.
Yeah. That market definitely could open up soon.
What is Ashton Genty to be the number 4 and the number 5 overall pick?
Genty to go 4 is
both,
16-1, and Genty to go 5 is 7-1, at least on DraftKings.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. I mean, because I think that those teams, even that are could just sit and pick Ashton Genty. I think that he could go 4 to the Patriots. I think he could go 5 to the Jaguars. And if someone's going to trade up, I think that they're definitely going to want to get ahead of the Raiders, who will probably have been the most common player-to-team connection, Raiders, Ashton Genty.
Okay. Since we last talked, the over-unders for players have gone up. If I can find this here somehow, draft position. So any of these stick out to you, Amico? We got a bunch of players here that DraftKings released. The Michael Williams, the 15.5 for Michael Williams, I thought was interesting and bettable. They also released Mike Green, Jahdae Barron, Evans. Boy, that line is actually moving, maybe based on Evans mock, but under 18.5 is now plus 175 there. Oh, and the Loveland one has moved a ton. I mean, Loveland has gone nuclear under 18.5, minus 250. I believe that was based on a Jeremiah tweet. But yeah, Amico, any comments on the player over under board right now?
Yeah, I like the Michael Williams under 15.5 the most, probably. I think that he has kind of risen as being the best pass rusher in this class, if you count Jalen Walker after him. And of course, Abdul Carter. It sounds like, great athlete, good intangibles. Doesn't have a ton of production, but was hurt last year. But it sounds like, his range starts as early as 8 with Carolina and goes all the way to 15 with Atlanta. I suppose he could go a couple of slots after that, but I really think that the Falcons is probably where that range ends, and that's right where we're at here. So I like that quite a bit.
What do you think of the Loveland line move, Amico? Because that one was like striking. I mean, it got absolutely pounded, this Loveland line, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so Jeremiah basically tweeted something that I think I've been thinking about this for a while, and it's that, he has Warren and Loveland, I think like 5 and 6 in his top 50. He said in his tweet that they're consensus top 10 guys. So they're going to go, they're going to go a little higher probably than I think the media thinks. I know that we have the issues with the positional value, but he made a good point on his podcast saying, you can take a bad player at an important position, or you can take a good player at a less important position, but at least he's a good player. And I do think that a lot of teams ultimately ascribe to that theory, even if we think that it's not the smartest way to team build.
I think that there was concern about Colston Loveland coming off shoulder surgery at one point, and clearly he has passed those question marks. So now that he has received a clean bill of health, it's not surprising that people would be moving him up boards.
Yeah.
The bet on Colston Loveland to make, I think, is to be the first tight end drafted at plus 500.
Yeah.
And we can eventually get to that. But I think that that's what's going on here. And again, in a draft where there's just a lot of murkiness and talent that, isn't elite, like I think people see Colston Loveland as an elite receiving tight end who, can hold his own as a blocker. And they feel very, very confident that he's going to be a good player. Whereas, there's a bunch of, there's a lot of pass rush prospects, but a lot of these guys didn't have very impressive production in college, and that's terrifying. Like, whoa, we're going to expect this pass rusher to be a productive NFL player when they didn't produce in college. That's not, ideal. That's not ideal. I'll say that.
Yeah, my only pushback on the tight end stuff is like we have seen a lot of tight ends not hit their stride in the NFL until year 3, year 4, or their second contract. And so to use the top 10 pick or top 12 pick at tight end, I understand it's a flat class, but yeah, I don't know. It scares me a little bit. We'll get to the first tight end off the board market here in a second. The other one that stuck out to me was this Jackson Dart, and we'll get to the second quarterback, but Jackson Dart's steam has just been massive lately. I mean, everyone now is saying Jackson Dart's going to go in the first round. His over-under is 24.5. Under is minus 155. In other words, market is expecting Jackson Dart to go within the top 25 picks. Evan, I believe you only had one quarterback in your mock in the first round. Any thoughts on the Jackson Dart situation right now?
I just don't know what to think about Jackson Dart at this point. I think that he has had like bumps throughout the process. Like all of a sudden people start talking about him, and then it'll kind of settle down and be like, oh, he's not that talented a thrower of the football. Renner really didn't like he doesn't like the offense that he comes from, because it's just a bunch of screens and bombs. And, you don't really see him make intermediate throws, and the NFL is like all about intermediate throws. Mm-hmm. So I really just don't know what to think about Jackson Dart's his evaluation or his draft projection.
Well, I mean, my thought is just quarterbacks typically always rise, unless it's like, the Will Levis situation or something like that. I mean, typically quarterbacks, even if they're not the cleanest prospects, the position is the most important position in sports. It's going to rise. And so like, I get it from that perspective. The total there now on Jackson Dart, again, 24.5 under minus 155. Amico, any thoughts on Dart or any other over-unders that you wanted to mention here?
Yeah, there's a couple of 21.5s out there on Dart. I definitely like that over. I have more stronger feelings there, just because I do think that this is kind of like the quarterback range. Once you get to like Steelers through, I guess like 40, thick 40 with the Saints, that's like a plentiful range for these quarterbacks. So I would prefer Dart over there, but I definitely think at plus money, 24.5 is at least worth some consideration. Yeah, I mean, I think the Mike Green over is still plus money. I think that's pretty good. Charlie Campbell over at Walter Football indicated that seemed like a pretty good bet. I mean, Green really has only been connected with the Bengals for the most part. I think that's really the only team that I've heard. I know that some people have said Atlanta, but I don't really think he's in play there. So plus 120 over 17.5. I think you're pretty much fading one team. Green has off-field stuff. He doesn't have a complete workout. I think Micah Williams is clearly ahead of him for most teams. I think Shamar Stewart could be ahead of him for some teams, given that he's a proven freak athlete. So, I like the green over.
Okay.
I really liked, if you were just staying on this page, Matthew
Sure.
Golden under 17.5,
Mm-hmm.
minus 125. We talked about how speed guys, especially at the receiver position, can get bumped up. John Ross, Darius Hayward, Henry Ruggs. The list really goes on and on. I think that the Dolphins, with the Tyreek Hill trade rumors at 13, could be a candidate to take Matthew Golden. I'm not sure that he even gets by the Cowboys at number 12. Again, this is a wide receiver class that is not particularly attractive, and therefore I think that due to position scarcity, Matthew Golden could benefit from that. I think he goes under 17.5 fairly confidently.
Okay. I want to go to odds to go in the first round, and the one that's been making waves, that has made a ton of waves since we last talked, is Jalen Milroe to go round 1 is now plus 130 here. Quarterbacks rise. We talked about all his problems last time and all the holes in his profile last time. I got 40-1 on Milroe to be the second quarterback off the board. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I
got 80-1.
Oh, baby. That's definitely good. But I do think the most likely is going to be Shador or Jackson Dart. We can get to that market here in a second. But yeah, Amico, what do you make of this seeming rise of Jalen Milroe right in your face, Amico? You were saying it's a joke, this kid can't play, and now he's only plus 130 to go in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I have to capitulate here. Since our last show, I've done a fair amount of work here on Milroe. I mean, obviously, I got to look at him for the dynasty stuff too. So I'm in the weeds, and I get it, right? I mean, like, he has athletic traits that are really good. He throws a good deep ball, maybe the best deep ball in the whole class, including Cam Ward. And this is not a super deep draft, really just flat out period, right? So I can understand the allure of a Milroe. We're shooting for ceiling. We're trying to beat Lamar Jackson. We're trying to beat Josh Allen. I think the Steelers thing in particular gets really interesting just because they don't have a second round pick. So this is kind of the time. If you're going to pull trig on that, you kind of just have to do it. So I am definitely buying Milroe. I moved him up in the dynasty stuff. I have some bets on him to go round 1. I think the best way to bet Milroe right now is actually in the matchups, because he's even bigger plus money than he is here to go round 1.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say he's plus 185 head to head with James Pierce, and James Pierce is someone that has a ton of off-field questions. He hasn't been in any of Daniel Jeremiah's round 1 mocks, so I kind of feel like, and his over under 31.5. So I basically feel like if you take Milroe here, you're more or less getting, will he go in the first round? And you may get a little extra room if Pierce goes truly in the second round. Because I think, 33, obviously, with the Browns, 34 with the Giants, 40 with the Saints. Those are all quarterback needy and potential spots for him as well. So you get a little extra room there.
Yeah, I mean, Steelers here at 21 overall, and I did take some, we'll get to the team stuff in a little bit, but I did take some Steelers to take quarterback with their first pick, plus 250, I think I got, which I thought was interesting. Evan, what do you make of the Jalen Milroe seeming rise up people's draft boards? Do you think that he'll end up going round 1?
I tend to not think that he'll end up going in round 1.
Well, plot twist.
But I had only one quarterback going in my round 1 mock. So,
yeah,
I can still win that bet 80-1 Jalen Milroe to be second quarterback drafted if he goes in the 30s. So that's what I'm kind of hoping for. I have a lot of takes on, like, I think Mason Taylor at plus 475 to go in the first round. I like that. I think that the buzz has really been building. Daniel Jeremiah mentioned for him potentially, I think the Commanders drafted 29. Yeah, 29, reuniting Mason Taylor with Jaden Daniels. They played together the shower narrative at LSU. Number 32 overall with the Eagles. If they trade Dallas Goedert, I think that Mason Taylor. I think that Jeremiah thinks that Mason Taylor is like a first-round player at this point, and that's good enough for me to bet at plus 475.
Yeah, that definitely seems
I
good.
also like Luther Burden at plus 200. Now,
Mhm.
he seems to be a very polarizing player, but I think that the Bills at 30, he would make a ton of sense for them. We know that they want a wide receiver. Bills for their first pick to be a wide receiver is 15 to 1. And this is a team that last year traded for Amari Cooper. It didn't work out, but we know that they're on the hunt for a wide receiver. I know they went and got Josh Palmer. He doesn't solve what they need. They need a receiver that can take the top off. That's what Amari Cooper used to be able to do. That's what Luther Burden, I think, will be able to do in the NFL, even though he wasn't used that way. We talked about this with Renner. He was in the slot a lot. Brady Cook, not a very good quarterback. The scheme wasn't really wide receiver friendly at Mizzou, even though they had their other wide receivers really good too. But I think that Luther Burden at plus 200, those are pretty good odds for him to be a first round pick.
Yeah, and while we're on this topic, Amico, it does strike me as pretty long. Bills to take a wide receiver with their first pick, 15 to 1. The favorite in that market is defensive line / edge at plus 105. Any thoughts on this one? I'm always looking for like late in the first round, people getting overconfident on what position a team is going to take.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see a receiver that kind of did that last year with the Keon Coleman thing. So I guess that's the argument not to, but 15 to 1, it's definitely still a need. So I don't hate
I
it.
think that the Bills could trade up, like try to make a trade up for Matthew Golden or something like that. We've seen the Bills trade up before, especially for pass catchers. I mean, they did it again to disappointing results with the tight end Dalton Kincaid. But I think that they can make a move up. I think that they need a wide receiver. They know that. Even after drafting Keon Coleman, they went and traded for Amari Cooper.
I mean, I think Ted McMillan might fall in their lap with the way he's going. So
That'd be interesting. You'd have the twin towers with Ted McMillan and Keon Coleman.
Okay, these player drafted by markets. Where is it? Here we go. Player drafted by. So I know Evan wanted to talk about a Genti thing. You can also get Shador. I mean, Evan didn't have Shador in his mock. There's been a lot of signs that Shador could slip. Who knows what team could maybe trade back in for him? And then Tyler Warren, if people think that Loveland's going to go above him, well, then you could be getting Tyler Warren maybe slipping to some degree. Evan, I guess we'll start with Genti. Any thoughts on which team will Ashton Genti be drafted by?
Again, if you are leaning into my premises, which it's risky out here. It's dicey. Don't trust me. Trust the Sims. But like Sean Payton has a long history of trading up for guys that he loves. You think about Marcus Davenport. So a long history of doing that. And the Broncos badly need a running back. And they've been connected to Omarion Hampton. I think that Ashton Genti is a clear tier above Omarion Hampton. So you have the need there. You have my premises which are that it's going to be easy for teams to trade up this year, and then a lot of teams are going to be making moves up the board. And then you have the fact that Sean Payton has a history of doing that, and again the need. So Ashton Genti 25 to 1, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I would criticize them if they burned a lot of capital to move up for a running back, given the state of their team. However, to Evan's point, maybe it won't be that expensive to move up a bunch into the Ashton.
Broncos were pretty good last year, man. They're loaded on defense.
Oh, I know. Shout out Broncos.
Their offensive line is in good shape. They've got their quarterback.
I'm a lifelong Broncos fan since last week, or since last season. Amico, any thoughts on the Genti market or Shador or Warren markets here?
Yeah, I mean, I think I might have said this on the last show, but I'm just going to keep hammering this Shador to the Browns plus 650. I just don't really get the price. I think that there's way too much confidence right now in the market that he's going to go to the Saints at 9 if he doesn't go like in those first 6 picks. And I mean, I have not seen any indication that they have any interest in Sanders. Teams really don't pick quarterbacks that they haven't met with at all. The Saints haven't met with Sanders at all.
Yeah.
And our boy, Nick Underhill, friend of the show, like I think all the reporting that he's done around that makes it seem like they're more of a Jackson Dart team. So like Saints at plus 100, I feel like that's just free equity there. With any of these other teams, it sounds like it's going to be maybe a little bit of a trade war. Giants, Browns, late first, maybe the Steelers are involved, but at the Browns price is just so much further ahead of the Giants and the Steelers. that I gravitate to that one.
Yeah, and to be clear, Amico is not saying that the Browns are going to take Shador number 2. What he's saying is they're going to trade back into the first round and try to get Shador in that.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a market on DraftKings where you can bet on, I believe it's plus 850, bet on the Browns to draft both Travis Hunter and Shador Sanders at plus 850.
Yeah, the
So
player, the
are you
parlays,
interested
I
in, you
saw
must
that.
be interested in that then, Amico.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Beam me up, Silva. Let's go.
Beam me up.
Hey,
Any
listen,
thoughts?
they're getting, I don't know if you guys know this, but the Browns are having a draft party on draft night, and Journey's going to be there. So, I mean, if Journey's coming, we gotta get the 2-for-1 Colorado special.
Gas up the bus. Okay. Any thoughts on where Tyler Warren will land? I think there's a ton of overconfidence in the Colts taking a tight end. Everybody, every mock has the Colts taking a tight end, and I get it. It's a need. I don't think that that'd be like that big of a priority for me, given that Anthony Richardson has struggled so much. We're going to take a pass catcher like Colston Loveland or something like that. I don't know. But Evan, any thoughts on where Tyler Warren might land here in the draft?
I think that his window starts at 8 to the Panthers. And I think that he could go 9 to the Saints. You know, I've been talking to Nick Underhill. I think the Bears at 10. That's, if you listen to Chicago radio, that's often a connection that comes up. You know, so I think that that's his range, 8 to 11, personally. And I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he went 5 to the Jaguars. Did you see Liam Cohen had some interesting comments? You know, I know that you highlighted the fact that he didn't even say Gabe Davis's name.
Yeah.
And then he put, on the back burner, oh, well, who are we going to throw the ball to? Obviously Brian Thomas, and then De'Ami Brown, and Parker Washington, and then, skip Gabe Davis, and then Brenton Strange in the running backs. And Brenton, these are inherited guys. So at number 5, again, with the flatness of the talent from 5 to whatever it is, could the Jaguars be like, Tyler Warren's the best player on the board? I think that they could.
Yeah.
If they can't find a trade partner, I think that makes sense.
Well, I've heard some negative stuff around Tyler Warren chatter lately. I don't know where this is really coming from, but a lot of it's everything they did at Penn State was manufactured. It was all the scheme and all this stuff. And I kind of disagree. But that said, if you think he could slip, I mean, there's some teams with tight end needs. Chargers, if he's really going to slip that far, Chargers 35-1, Bucks are 30-1.
They did manufacture plays for Tyler Warren. Is that always a bad thing? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think that all of his targets were manufactured by any means. They wanted to get the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
To me, that is a positive.
Seems like it's overthinking it to me. But yeah, Amico, what do you make of the Warren FUD lately? Or do you think there actually has been Warren FUD lately? And I can pull up the odds to first tight end market also.
Yeah, for me, it's less Warren, at least in my opinion, it's less Warren FUD and more Loveland buzz.
Mm-hmm.
The arguments that you're saying exist regarding Warren, I just don't think that's not a good ball nowhere take. I just don't think that. I don't think that NFL teams believe any of that stuff, because we know that guys like Jeremiah and McShay and Brugler, they have this guy in their top 10. So I think that's better reflection than, first name bunch of numbers on Twitter saying, oh yeah, Tyler Warren manufactured touches.
Right.
But I do think that there's value in Loveland 5-1, because I think that to be the first tight end, because if you believe both of these guys are really good, it's kind of pick your flavor. Who's to say that, the Bears don't prefer Colston Loveland to Tyler Warren? Who's to say that the Colts, maybe they're taking a tight end, but they're the first team to take a tight end and they prefer Loveland? It's possible. It's not really priced in, I think, at over 80%.
I'm a little surprised this market is still like this. And again, first tight end selected, Tyler Warren is minus 900. Loveland is plus 500. I'm surprised that this market is still this wide, considering how close it seems like a lot of people have this. In my head, it's not this close because I think Tyler Warren is a total freak. I'm, of course, not biased at all. Shout out Penn State. But yeah, Evan, it sounds like you're interested in Colston Loveland, plus 500 first tight end also.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be separated by this much. I think that, and I'm just like you. I mean, I love Tyler Warren watching him play during the season. I mean, he really stood out as an absolute stud, really in every facet.
Yeah.
I mean, he's good in every facet. I think that he's one of these rare rookie tight ends that you're going to be able to jump in and use, like he's going to be a full-time player right away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure the same is the case about Colston Loveland, but I do understand the thinking that Colston Loveland has maybe a higher ceiling as a pure receiver than Tyler Warren. So if a specific team is looking for that, then I could understand Loveland jumping Tyler Warren in terms of his draft slot.
Okay. When we get this close to the draft, I don't really love betting these markets. I don't know what you think, Amico, but the how many of X position will be selected in the first round. I feel like it's been hammered out pretty well to be pretty accurate. Quarterback over 2.5 is like borderline lock at this point, according to the market, minus 425 there in that market. Just went to minus 475 as we're talking. Amico, anything left for you on this board here? The positions, how many will go in the first round?
Yeah, I mean, I'm patiently waiting for this quarterback number to get to like plus 350 or so, and then I think I'm going to take that under. I think that, I mean, Evan's mock draft, he only had, I mean, it might happen live on the show. Evan's mock draft only had one quarterback. My last one only had two. It sounds like most people think 2 or 3 is the right number. I think 3 is maybe even most likely if you believe that some of these quarterback needy teams feel like they have to jump Cleveland at 33. But I don't think that it's going to happen. I don't think 3 is going to hit, 75% of the time or whatever, the current implied odds are. So, I mean, and quarterbacks just aren't that good. They're not that good. Like, we know Cam Ward. He's the only one that we know for certain is going to go on day one. And, as much as we want to make these quarterbacks happen, it doesn't mean that it's going to.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be Shador. There's going to be Milroe buzz. At this point, I'm pretty confident Jackson Dart is going to go in round 1. So, yeah, if you think it's one of Shador or one of Milroe goes, then the over.
I'm taking the under.
But yeah, I mean, plus 330. Amico said he's looking for plus 350. As we're live on the show here, got to plus 330 under 2.5.
Yeah, I wonder, did like a report come out or something?
I don't know. It doesn't take much to move these markets. Like okay. Amico betting like $75 will like move the market by like 50 points.
All right. Yeah, for me, like I said it last time, and whatever the response, but I just bet all the plus money ones because I just think that everything's up for grabs.
Yeah,
like everything's up for grabs. Guys are going to sneak into the end of the first round that nobody even thought would go in the first round in a million years, and that will shake up. How many cornerbacks or whatever positions sneak in, that will shake up the number of guys that get drafted in that position, at those positions. So
yeah,
I just like pretty much the plus money side on every single one of these, except for offensive players selected. I don't really care about that.
Yeah, I mean, the running backs, the Travion Henderson's been getting a bunch of buzz as a possible first round pick lately. Over 2.5 running backs is plus 135. So I haven't taken anything there yet, but I'm definitely watching to see if we can get more clarity on a third running back in the first round other than Genty and Amari Hampton.
Trevion season.
Okay. I want to go to these positions again. Odds to be the second quarterback taken. I mentioned I got Milroe 40-1. Evan has 81. That is down to 6-1. We already kind of covered that. Dart is plus 200. Shador is minus 250. Amico, anything for you left here on this board? Odds to be the second quarterback off the board.
No, I think this is stripped pretty bare. There's definitely risk with Shador, but it's close between those other two guys. I don't really have like a strong opinion.
Okay. I want to go to second receiver here, Silva. And this line has not moved. The first receiver has not moved, which surprised me a little bit. Tet minus 230. Matthew Golden plus 150. I did say take some Egbuka, first wide receiver, 16-1. That's down to 13-1 now. I don't feel overly great about that. But then they also opened up this new market since we last talked. Odds to be the second wide receiver taken. So, Evan, I think you're on the Matthew Golden side of the Golden versus Tet debate here. But any thoughts on these markets here?
Yeah, I think that Tet is going to fall. I think the general feeling is that he's going to go later than expected, and I think that Matthew Golden will go earlier than expected, or just right where he's projected, which is really 12 to the Cowboys, and that will be earlier than Tet goes. So I have a fairly decent level of, and I don't have a whole lot of confidence in really anything in terms of like projected draft slot, but I do have a fairly decent level of confidence in Matthew Golden being drafted ahead of Tet McMillan. I think you could bet Matthew Golden at plus 150 to be first receiver drafted, Tet McMillan at plus 160 to be second receiver drafted, and I think that that's okay.
Yeah.
My question is, could someone jump in there? Luther Burden, 16-1 to be second receiver drafted. Egbuka, 7-1 to be second receiver drafted. That's where more of it gets real interesting if you want to make like a longer shot bet, which I still think that, and we talked about this last time, I still think that we're in long shot zone because I just don't think that anybody, when Peter Schrager, who's one of the best mock drafters, every year has a couple of guys in his mock draft who nobody else projected in the first round. They go in the first round. This is his like year, his time of year to shine. And when he's saying that he thinks that the guy who goes number 5 could actually go in the, could go in the 20s or vice versa, like he just thinks it's a complete, the seas have parted and everything's wide open, everything's on the table. It's an opportunity for us to hit some long shots.
So my thought on these wide receiver markets, where you can poke a lot of holes in Matthew Golden. The production wasn't there. The tape guys say he doesn't play as fast as his combine time. I mean, you can poke holes in Matthew Golden, and there's people poking a lot of holes in Ted McMillan also. Who they're not poking holes in, other than to say he doesn't have a ceiling, is Egbuka. So again, I said I had the 16-1 for him to be the first wide receiver. I'm kind of intrigued by the 7-1 for Egbuka to be the second wide receiver off the board also. But yeah, any final thoughts on these wide receiver markets before we move on, Amico?
Yeah, I really like the Egbuka second receiver. I think that his chances of being the second receiver taken, like proportional to the other players, is way, way better than his chance to be the first receiver taken, and it's not really priced that way. Egbuka, like you said, not a high ceiling, really safe player. Like he's going to run block. He's going to do all the little things. He's going to be a guy that coaches like. Whereas Ted McMillan is like the opposite. Like it sounds like none of these coaches like him right now. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if we see Golden go 12 and then Tet goes 30th or he goes second round. And that's definitely ample time for Egbuka to kind of sneak in there.
Okay. Other one I wanted to touch on here is odds to be the second running back selected. Amarian Hampton is a huge favorite here, minus 330. Trevion Henderson, plus 200. And then not giving really anyone else a shot. Quinshon Judkins, 22-1. Caleb Johnson, 25-1. Amico, do you think this is the right price on odds to be second running back selected?
Yeah, I think it's a little closer between Hampton and Henderson because, again, I think Henderson is an excellent pass blocker. So if you're talking about some of these teams like Denver or Chicago who have young quarterbacks that they're going to want to look to elevate their games in year 2, I just feel like Henderson's a better fit in those kinds of situations. And then Hampton is a better fit with like Pittsburgh or the Chargers, where they're just looking for someone who can kind of, wear teams out and be a complement to their passing game. So I think this should be very close. I like Henderson at plus 200. I think that this should be like, I don't know, Hampton minus 200, Henderson plus 150, something like that, plus 125. So it's a little wide for me.
So Trevion's a bet for you, and I would agree on that at plus 200.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to, I think Evan wanted to talk about the offensive line ones. As we mentioned, this is flipped, the Membu versus Will Campbell. Will Campbell is now minus 210 to be first offensive lineman selected. Second offensive lineman selected, Membu is the favorite at minus 165. Then you have Campbell at plus 165. But what if it's not those guys? Evan, any thoughts on the second offensive lineman market?
Yeah, I just think that there's a chance that teams like Kelvin Banks better than the NFL draft media, and therefore I would take a chance on him to be the second offensive lineman drafted, ideally behind Will Campbell, and I think that Amico likes that one as well.
Yeah. Okay. Before we get out of here, I wanted to hit some of the team ones, and these can be like really mispriced, and they can vary widely across sites. So let me just, draft team
Yeah, the
specials.
team ones are great opportunities for long shots.
Yep. So I mentioned the Steelers one that I took, this Steelers quarterback one. I got plus 250. It's plus 225. Now Steelers take a quarterback with their first pick. Favorite there is defensive line edge, plus 180. We mentioned the Bills wide receiver one already there at 15 to 1. I thought that one was interesting. Evan also wanted to note Dolphins wide receiver and
Yeah.
Raiders wide receiver also. So go ahead first on Dolphins wide receiver, Evan.
This would be contingent upon the Dolphins trading Tyreek Hill. And I know that their GM, Chris Greer, came out and said, oh, we'd only trade him for 2 first-round picks. We'll see about that. I think that he might be a player that, well, not only does Tyreek Hill, I don't think that he wants to be on the Dolphins anymore. I think that they've just had about enough of him. One of my bold predictions is that Tyreek Hill gets traded back to the Chiefs, maybe for a second-round pick. And, in that scenario, I think if they can agree upon those terms, the Dolphins could use their first-round pick on a wide receiver.
Yeah. I mean, also Tyreek didn't have that great of a year last year, and you could blame the wrist or whatever, but just forget about all the off-field stuff. I didn't think
There are all
field.
kinds of red flags on him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 31 years old now.
Speed
He's
doesn't
doing
age
all
well.
the stuff on social media.
Yeah.
The police are being called to his house. He didn't play well last year. He got, apprehended before that one game. He blamed it all on some phantom wrist injury.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of red flags on Tyreek Hill.
He's on the Antonio Brown track, for sure. Okay. Raiders also wide receiver, Evan, you wanted to mention. That would be an interesting one at 14 to 1. I mean, they're picking so high, and that's why you can get 14 to 1. But if there was a trade scenario, maybe you could see it. Any more thoughts?
I think it would be
Raiders?
a trade down scenario. And I also think that Matthew Golden's range, could be earlier than people expected for all the reasons that we mentioned with the speed receiver.
Yeah. Amico, any thoughts on that or any other team-specific ones that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, if you want to go to NFC South for me, Evan, I like the Saints. I think the Saints are a really good team to attack right now because, again, minus 155 to take a quarterback, I think is way, way, way overconfident. This was like 2 to 1 a week ago. Obviously, big news since then was the Derek Carr injury.
Yeah.
Or I guess the injury wasn't new, but it was kind of coming out that he had it. I just don't buy
unless
that.
It's not real.
Right, unless it's not real and he's just pouting or something. But I just don't buy that if the Saints were not terribly interested in quarterback at 9 60 days ago, that all of a sudden now that they are, because Carr is not going to be there. Like, I just don't think that teams make decisions that way. I think that a much more likely outcome is that, master of trenches, Mickey Loomis attacks the trenches again here at 9, either with the defensive line edge or offensive line, both at 6 and 7 to 1 respectively. So I like both of those markets. I definitely lean a little bit closer to defensive line edge just because I think that the talent pool is a little better there in that spot. But I think that this is a great market to attack if you have a strong take, really on anything that isn't quarterback.
Yeah. I mentioned the Bucks one in case there is slip at the tight end position and they're not happy what they're getting from Cade Otton. 35 to 1 on the Bucks to take a tight end with their first pick is very, very, very long there. Speaking of tight ends, Evan, since we last talked, there was kind of more fire on this Mark Andrews stuff. Sounds like they're willing to trade him. Before, it sounded like they wanted to keep him. He's not that expensive. Like, I think that I would probably keep. But yeah, any reaction to the latest Mark Andrews news and any thoughts on this Ravens first position market?
I don't know that would affect the Ravens first position market just because they have really invested in that position. Obviously, they've got Isaiah Likely. They also have Charlie Kolar.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they could just ride with that.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it affects that. I just think it's interesting the possibility that Mark Andrews going to the Chargers to reunite with Greg Roman and provide Justin Herbert with like a dynamic receiving tight end. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yep.
If we could stay with the Ravens for 1 second, I think that if there's a bet here, it's linebacker 25 to 1 because Jihad Campbell, who is like a consensus like top 10, 15 guy, entering the draft process. Like, it came out that he had the torn shoulder. Doesn't sound like a long-term injury, but you never really know with these kinds of things. The medical stuff always seems to hurt teams. But the thing that we know about the Ravens is that they are always just ready to scoop value. It doesn't really matter the position. They did it with Kyle Hamilton. They did it with Tyler Linderbaum. I definitely think that they could potentially take Jahad Campbell. This team has lost some linebacker depth over the last couple of years, so I think that could be a good pick for them.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else you guys want to get off your chest here? We're not going to do any more draft prop shows until maybe round 2 stuff after round 1. So if you have anything else to get off your chest, now is the time. All right. We'll be back on Monday evening for a mock draft. I will be serving as your honorable commissioner, and the mock draft players will be Silva, Daigle, Ben Standig, Scott Smith, and Mike Renner. So 5 mockers with me hosting. Should be a fun mock draft. Look for that on Monday night. Good luck out there in the draft prop streets to everyone. For Amico, for Evan, Bruce Luke, Bruce Ryan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.